humanitarian, decided to create buildings that could save lives based on traditional architecture in Iran. Khalili spent much of his life teaching this new form of architecture to volunteers and organizations determined to provide adequate shelter as quickly as possible to survivors of natural disasters. But these structures have also proven to save lives. After the 7.6 magnitude earthquake in Nepal earlier this year, an orphanage in the Kathmandu Valley that was built from Cal Earth designs remained intact. In fact, over 40 Cal Earth domes that were built in 2006 for the Pegasus Children's Project in Nepal withstood the disaster, saving the lives of over 90 children and their caretakers.
My father was really inspired by things that he could find in nature. He was always talking about the universal principles, earth, water, air, and fire, and how these elements work together. For him, it was beyond just building. It was something about sort of a building and a philosophy put together that if you really try and understand the natural elements and work with them instead of against them, you can really create things that are beautiful and functional and that they're sustainable and they'll last. Cal Earth is a nonprofit organization founded by my father, Nader Khalili, who was an architect and humanitarian. He decided that he wanted to learn how to build for people who didn't have any money, who didn't have access to unlimited material and unlimited budgets. So he began studying the traditional architecture of Iran, which is where he was from, and really fell in love with the earth architecture concept and spent the rest of his life, evolving and developing different ways of building with the earth and sort of taking this old technology and bringing it into the current age. One of his biggest inspirations was the Persian poet Rumi, who lived about 800 years ago. One story goes that, he was so fearful of his building always having cracks in it, and, architects are always afraid of things that are cracking. And so what he did is he went to the poetry of Rumi and he found a poem that said that which you fear now is your true worth. And he took that and he sort of thought about it and he said, well, I must be worth a crack then, and he spent some time meditating on it, and then he looked to nature and he saw all these different kinds of animals that their scales, they have cracks in them, like lizards and snakes, and he saw how the crack was built into the design, right? Something in nature that he found. So he started to build the crack in. That's what he would say, that, by covering the buildings with what we call reptiling, it's a small little earthen ball that we cover that you can utilize. That not only does it create sun and shade zones, it trickles the water down, but it prevents having a large surface that's totally open-faced so that you're not worrying constantly about refacing your building all the time. This is a very simple building technology. It's sandbags, barbed wire, and earth. Those are pretty much the only things involved. And what you do is you fill the sandbag with earth. You can either stabilize it or not. You can add a little cement depending on what you want to do, or some other kind of stabilizer like lime. And then you add in a little bit of water into the mix, and once you pour it into the bag, you basically take a step back and you lay it in a course. And once it's laid flat and it's in the correct position, then someone will come and tamp it down to compact the material. That's what the strength really comes from, is the compaction. And then between every row, we lay a course of barbed wire. combination creates an immensely strong structure that's above and beyond all the building requirements. You know, with a handful of people, even without any experience, and one skilled instructor, we have workshop participants building domes in one day within 2 days of being here. So inside this structure, you can see that there are PVC pipes, and they're being used to bring light into the building as well as bring air and ventilation. There are some in the top for skylights, and again, this is all just recycled material that you can access anywhere. There's a small little bedroom nook in this dome so that you can sleep here. It can be made bigger, of course. It's all very flexible depending on what it is that you need. You can shift and change the style of the building, the size. You can put different kinds of big windows. But if you have no money and no materials, you can just utilize things like PVC pipes and recycled materials like that.
Yeah, I came here 10 years ago to learn to build my own house, and spent 3 years studying with Nora Kalili. And then I finished up, did my study, and went off, and I was building houses in all sorts of different countries around the world. I got a phone call from another friend who said that the architect Kalili had passed away. You know, and I just was literally dropped to my knees. It was a surprise. And sort of in the following months, his family and myself and other long-term apprentices who'd known him and who cared about the work, we all came together and said, how can we keep this place alive?
So what we need then is a couple of people.
When I was here as an apprentice, he was always talking about how the construction industry, architecture, engineering, was always characterized by men. And he felt that it was wrong, and that women have an energy, the feminine energy that brings something valuable. And so he went out of his way to keep the technical part of the work such that women could participate, such that children could participate. So you don't need to be really strong. You need instead to be cooperative. And since then I've been the site director, helping to bring in apprentices, helping the Kalili family really to run their father's legacy.
These projects have been done all over the world, in different countries. We've had students go and build in disaster areas. And there's different issues in different parts of the world, different kinds of natural elements. And what we've tried to do is figure out ways to modify the structures so that they will withstand all the elements. You know, at this point, we feel confident to say that these are hurricane-proof, tornado-proof, that, you know, they're earthquake-resistant to the highest amount that you can test. And we've actually had people build in Haiti and other countries and show that these buildings have withstood, you know, after the hurricane has come. For example, somebody built in the Philippines, and we actually saw a picture of the building after a typhoon had come through, and the building was still standing.
Well, the Philippines is a very vulnerable country to climate change impacts, extreme weather events. When I saw what Cal Earth was doing, I thought it was something that I would like to learn more and see if it is a viable solution to some of our problems with housing and emergency response. Especially building. I was never an earth builder. I had no experience at all in architecture or any form of building, and Cal Earth taught me so much. And I see more a future in it and developing more of earth architecture in the Philippines and making it an example.
How can we build shelters for people in the world who have no money? Imagine it. You know, we say, okay, we don't have any money, we can't. How are we going to start? So we sat down, we had some money. We bought 10 straw bales, sat around in a circle. That became our classroom. And then I came out and I said, look, the only thing that we can build that doesn't cost any money is to dig a pit.
One of the things my father always talked about was that it's really important in your life to have a quest, a reason to wake up every morning that's beyond just what you're going to do that day. Eventually, you know, somehow the pieces come together, and that was what Cal Earth was for him. He was so all about helping other people. It's truly amazing, because it's not that we're just coming in and we're saying, here, we're going to build this for you. We say, no, we're going to just teach you to do it, and then we're going to leave so that you can continue, and you continue to build with your own community.
That's it for this week. Join the conversation with us on social media.
Philosophy put together that if you really try to understand the natural elements and work with them instead of against them, you can really create things that are beautiful and functional, and that they're sustainable and they'll last. Cal Earth is a non-profit organization founded by my father, Nada Khalili, who was an architect and humanitarian.
Nepal earlier this year, an orphanage in the Kathmandu Valley that was built from Cal Earth's designs remained intact. In fact, over 40 Cal Earth domes that were built in 2006 for the Pegasus Children's Project in Nepal withstood the disaster, saving the lives of over 90 children and their caretakers. Humanitarian decided to create buildings that could save lives based on traditional architecture in Iran. Khalili spent much of his life teaching this new form of architecture to volunteers and organizations determined to provide adequate shelter as quickly as possible to survivors of natural disasters. But these structures have also proven to save lives. After the 7.6 magnitude earthquake in
My father was really inspired by things that he could find in nature. He was always talking about the universal principles, earth, water, air, and fire, and how these elements work together. For him, it was beyond just building. It was something about sort of a building and a